So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. We finally got over it at last. So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. They didn't do much in the past. So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. We can get back to the basics at last. Now we got back in power again, the Republicans, after 4 years in the minority, partly shared with a fiscal conservative Democrat on many important votes. They're back in power. And we can get back to the basics now, because when they were in power last time, 5 of them, Republicans, we were doing a lot of good things. We were trying to get more revenue in town, recurring additional profitable revenue, and we were trying to get the schools upgraded, not by building new ones, but by slowly upgrading Pearson. And then they had plans to do other ones, but they got hit by the greatest recession since the Great Depression, and that didn't help too much. And then they fired George Clawson, trying to improve the speed of getting more revenue in town, and that backfired on them because everybody yelled and screamed and jumped up and down in meetings with signs and laughed, and the voters were fooled into voting him into office and voting the Republicans out. And many of the Republicans, of course, didn't even run again. So we're back to the basics, and I want to talk a little bit tonight about being back to the basics. And this is a program I've done many times. This is a course I've given all over the world. I probably talked to people 1,000 times about this planning that we're going to go over. I've done it many times on this show, but now it's time to go over it again. In times of desperation, we're in desperation now. And in times of desperation, you have to change your approach. It's like being in having a cold and then pneumonia, and the next thing you know, you're in the hospital in the intensive care. We're getting all kinds of special attention, and hopefully you get better. And as you get better, they start to delegate you back down the chain again to the normal doctor. So we're in times of desperation now, and we have to do things differently. I've been advising this last board for years to do things differently, never paid much attention over the last 4 years, but now maybe we get back to the basics again. The finance board takes control. That's what happens when you're in trouble. They shove you into the intensive care unit. They got expert attention 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with all kinds of monitoring devices and all that kind of thing. So what's going to happen now, they may not do this here, but my recommendation is for the finance board to take control and get this problem squared away. And the way they do that is they have to go and get the facts. That's the first thing. They got to make sure they got the facts, because in the last X months, maybe even in the last year, everybody's been trying to blame Henry Centrella for all our problems, which is not really the case. He's part of the problem, but we just didn't have adequate checks and balances over the years, proper budgeting and all kinds of decision-making and all kinds of things like that. So we are partially getting back on our feet there. Some good work has been done. But what we need to do now is, during the honeymoon period, which is about 3 months normally in business, we've got to get all the facts out on the table, and everybody's got to agree that they are the facts, and we probably even need some outside consulting to check and balance our own people to make sure that they really are the facts. So the first thing that should happen is the finance board should take control, and they should really pay attention to the detail, all 7 of them, even though 2 of them will always be a drag on the other 5, because they have a different philosophy. They were in before. One of them's been in, this is her 6th term, and the other has been in for, this is going to be his 5th and 6th years. So this is a real problem for these people. Matter of fact, they fired the one that's going to be in for 5 or 6 years, George Clawson. So the finance board takes control. It looks like they're doing that. I don't know how long that'll last, but I give them credit for that. Urgently, the finance board has to urgently coordinate the production of a plan for success. Remember, we used to have a program called Plan for Success where we went through a lot of this kind of information we're going to do tonight. But the finance board has to coordinate that plan, not the town manager, nobody else, not the selectmen, the finance board, because this is a finance problem. And in our charter, it says that the selectmen and the finance board are in charge of the finances of the town. So since they're in charge, they have to get the facts. If they don't get the facts, then how can they be responsible and accountable? So the first thing they have to do is get the facts, and they have to coordinate the production of a plan for success. And that has to be done by everybody, led by the finance board. Everybody else has to be participating. It's got to be teamwork. Everybody in town can get their 2 cents into this plan. They have open meetings. Everybody can speak at public comment. They can send letters in. They can write papers like I do, the red and green papers. You can read them all in the town hall if you want them, or we can get them for you if you need them. So that's what they're trying to do now. I went to the meeting the other night. I only sat through about a half an hour of it because that's all that was open. And these 5 Republican fiscal conservatives began to take control of the financial problem in the town and started to take some action. There's another meeting, follow-up meeting that's coming up, and that's where they're going to ask, they've asked Robin, the finance director, to make some recommendations to them about a new tax, supplemental tax. And that's up in the air. There may not be a decision made right away according to the newspapers today, but they're going to discuss it again, and they're going to say, well, what's the next step here? On this. By the time you see this program, we'll probably have already had the town meeting on the GAN. That's the loan we're trying to get for the schools for December. And then, of course, on Saturday is the voting day, 8 to 8, Pearson School. The town meeting, should you see this before the town meeting, is up at the Gilbert School, 7 o'clock. So now this plan we're going to do as a team, the town, led by the finance board, has to have demonstrable and measurable milestones. It's on the next slide. So we need demonstrable and measurable milestones that everybody can see, that are out in the open, that are public information, that anybody can question, that anybody can give feedback on. Now, feedback is very important on these milestones. You get the milestones from all the responsible parties, both within and without the town. Like everybody that has to give a milestone on this thing. And then we got to meet them. It can't be like the annual audit where we're a year late or 2 years late. We got to set down milestones, and then we got to make sure we meet them and we have a plan for success. They have to be demonstrable to everybody, and they have to be measurable. And that's very important because we're also going to be doing management by exception. And that is, if somebody sees our plan and they say, no, that's not the truth, that's not factual, it's not going to happen that way, and that could be a good percentage of the time because you don't always get all the right information in your original plan, but you've got to be open for feedback, and then you have to make decisions along the way to stay on plan or to make trade-offs. And again, they need to be agreed by everybody. They need to be open, and it can't be any secret stuff going on. Now, I think that we're probably in a little deeper trouble now than we thought we would be in, because when people were running for election, I don't think they really wanted to give out all the truthful information to everybody about where we stand financially. I could be wrong. We'll find that out over the next 2 or 3 months. But that's moving along. So now I want to show you a critical path. Critical path is very simple. I did a little slide for you here by hand, and it's just that you have several activities. Our plan will have a lot more than this, and I'll show you in a few minutes. But you have activity number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 there, and you have time scales underneath, and you say at the highest level, the financial board, this is the one that they really want to make sure happens by the dates they put down. They don't have to look at all of the information in the various levels of planning below this. This is the top of it. and they can see it, review it. I suggest they review it every 2 weeks at their meeting, first on the agenda. And it's very important that we get this plan, we have the demonstrable milestones, and then we manage it from week to week to week to week and make decisions along the way. Now, on the next slide, we want to make sure that everybody knows that they have time scales. Everybody has to make their time scales. And if they're not going to be making their time scales, they got to yell for help. They got to tell the finance board, help. Looks like we're not going to make our time scale for this reason and that reason and that reason. So when they do that, we have a chance to manage the plan back into shape again, solve their problems for them, make decisions. Or in some cases, maybe eliminate some things. So the time scales are very important, and we have to work the time scales. Now, let me tell you why that's a problem for us. It's not a problem in business. When I worked around the world, time scales, we had to, if we got an airline contract to put a computer system in, we were given one date, the end date. We wanted it in by next September, a year from now or 2 years from now, whatever. And then we had to put a plan together to do that with everybody that was going to be involved, the customer, the users, the companies making the hardware, the software, et cetera, et cetera. It all had to come together. And we had to manage it. You got to manage it to time scales. And there was always somebody, like we're going to have here with the minority, somebody betting that we wouldn't make it. I remember a guy at British European Airways running around betting everybody 10 cents that we wouldn't make the time scales, and we'd never make the cutover. Of course, he was wrong in the end. We did make it. But that's the kind of thing you have to deal with. I also want to say to you that when we went overseas to do, or even in America, to do a big system, and we went to an airline, say in Australia, or England, or Italy, or anywhere, they would say, okay, manufacturer, we were the manufacturer, and we were putting it all together, and we were the ones that had the experience doing that. Here's the people that are going to take it over from you when you leave. And they would give you a whole bunch of people that had all kinds of interests and all kinds of backgrounds, but none of them in computers or computer systems or software or anything else. Most of them couldn't even interface with customers. But we had to beat them into shape, manage them into shape, encourage them to learn. They had to be willing to learn so that in the end we could hand the system over to them when we were done. And they could run their system, which they all do now. They run their own systems and only get help when they need it. So the time scales are very important, but I want to tell you, politicians don't like time scales. Now this group we have in now, they know about time scales, and they know they have to manage the time scales. They're fiscal conservatives. And they got to discuss time scales, because you can't make plans if you don't let anybody know what the plans are. And you can't coordinate it. You can't manage it. You can't make the decisions from week to week to week to week, or day to day to day, or hour to hour to hour if you need to. So, and special meetings need to be called. There's going to be a lot of special meetings. I saw in a paper today where one of the minority members said that she doesn't even think she might be able to make the meeting. If she makes the meeting, she'll probably vote no on whatever the question is without having heard all the facts. So people make up their mind. They don't like time scales. Politicians don't. Fiscal conservatives, businessmen, people like me, we love time scales, because that gives us something that we can sink our teeth into and get accomplished, and force people to come up with the goods that we need to be able to make it. Now, I want to show you on the next slide the time scales. An example, I've used it many times here before, I'm using it again. The way you want to go with the time scales is you want to go, you have them across your triangle, and the left-hand triangle you see on the screen. That's the proper way to do a plan, so that when you have your events, which are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the left-hand side triangle, they should go down the slope until you get to the finish line. You usually got an S there for start and an F for finish. And if you have a responsible plan with all the facts out in the open from the beginning and changes made by exception along the way and manage to those time scales, then you can be successful. You'll make it. You might not have all the quantity you thought you'd have. You might have a few mistakes along the way. Things do change over time. If it's a 2-month plan, it should be pretty accurate. If it's a year plan, it might be a little slack there. If it's a 2-year plan, a little more slack. And if it's 5 years, even a little more to take into consideration. And we usually build that into the plan to begin with. We know there's going to be some problems. So that's the proper way to do it. But you got to have a plan. You got to have the management set up. You got to have somebody in control. You got to have everybody playing to the same game and not trying to subvert the progress. So if they vote against it, the plan from day one, then they're probably not going to cooperate much along the way. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted a clean slate this time for the Finance Board and for the Board of Education. We didn't quite get it on either one, but I do think that the ones that were there before are going to be an anchor and an impediment rather than a help. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they prove me wrong, but I don't doubt it. Okay, now the improper way is the opposite way. The less definition you do up front at the start of the triangle, and you head up the slope towards infinity, usually those projects fail. They never make the end. And that's because they have poor planning up front, they don't have enough planning up front, and they have to keep replanning along the way. I used to draw this triangle with a lot of circles inside, showing recursive circles, showing that you have to go, you get to number 2, and oh, we forgot something, we got to go back to 0 again. Or you get to number 3, oh, we forgot something, you got to go back to 1 again. You get to number 6, oh, we forgot something, we got to go all the way back to 1 again. That doesn't happen when you plan properly and you get everything out. And by the way, this improper approach is the one the Democrats are following and the one we're in still to this day until these new majority can get it squared away, which I hope they can do pretty quickly. They have to do it pretty quickly. They have to have a lot of meetings. They got to get people, hold them accountable and responsible, and get the information, get outsiders to check it over to make sure it's accurate and that we got the right information to go ahead with, and then we can have a chance to be able to tell the world, the town, the state, everybody exactly where we stand, what our plan is, how we're going to get out of it, how much money we need from the taxpayers, and all that kind of thing. So, but we need to know. We need to get in there. We need to get it all on a piece of paper in the next few weeks, a month at the latest, get on top of it, and then we will have a better chance to go down that slope rather than up the slope to infinity. Now, going up to infinity means a lot of things. It could mean bankruptcy. It could mean anything. It could mean the death of our town if values start to crash and businesses start to leave and won't come here. It's pretty bleak. But if we do it the proper way, we should be able to save ourselves. We should be able to do it without all that. But it will be painful. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be painful. There will be supplemental tax. We don't know yet how big. They're talking about 3 mills now, which is 10%. It could be more than that. For every additional 3 mills is another 10%. So it's going to hurt people. And whenever I see numbers in the paper like, well, Joe's only going to have to pay $400, I always add a couple hundred to it because Joe's going to have to earn $600 to pay $400. Nobody ever tells you that. So it's always more hurtful than people think when they see these numbers in the paper, and the town manager even gives out those kind of numbers in the past. I would rather see him give out, here's how much you got to earn to pay the amount that you're going to have to pay so people can get the proper information, and that's kind of what I like to do. So on the next slide, we want to make sure that when we do the plan, we have dependencies, and we have the proper dependencies all in place up front and evolved over time as they have facts change and problems come up or good things come up, like somebody gives us $10 million. That would be a good thing that would help the plan. But if we find that there's an extra $10 million there that we haven't accounted for, that won't help the plan. So we need to do all the dependencies. We need to get it all on the table. And on the next slide, I got a little example that I quickly drew at the library today of a bunch of dependencies with a critical path. So that all these dependencies need to come in. Some of them might come in from the financial department, some might come in from the sales department, some come in from the tax collector, some come in from the police department, some come in from the fire department, some come in from everybody. They add, and then sooner or later, they have to complete their activity, and then they have to, and that leads us back to the critical path that we showed earlier. And that red line is the finance board's critical path. They don't do too much with the stuff below and above. And by the way, in our plan, it won't just be a simple one like this. There'll be a lot of dependencies, because the police will have a lot of dependencies to get their work done, the fire department a lot to get their work done, the town garage a lot to get their work done, the auditors a lot to get their work done, possible bankruptcy analysts will have to do a lot to get their work done, and it just goes on and on. But they all got to get to work together, and there can be no impediments, there can nobody dragging their feet. And down the bottom, you see I drew the timeline for those red lines up there, and there's a timeline. And as long as we're making the timeline and everybody reports that their activities are on time, and we double check them all and ask a lot of questions to make sure they are really on time, then the finance board will have an easy time managing it once they get a plan. And then they can call the special meetings if, for example, number one slips by 2 weeks. These are months I put between each point here. Then they got a real problem on their hand, and they got to go manage it back again. Find out how they can make that time up. And if it slips 2 months, it's tougher. And if it slips 3 months, it's tougher. And right now, every time we have a meeting, some new problem comes up. We can't have that. Now, the other thing, the next slide, is that everything has to be agreed by all parties. That's why you're starting out right now with a bit of a chain around your ankle, because you have two people in there that are philosophically 180 out from the 5 in the majority. And they all say they're going to try to work together, you won't see too much of that. That'll disappear pretty quickly, because there are people who don't even agree that we should do a plan. So, and certainly there are people that don't think we should do a supplemental tax. Or that we should cut costs in the school system or something like that. By the way, I meant to also say the schools should also be totally involved in this and part of the plan for anything they have to be involved in. Payrolls, cost cutting, revenue issues, that kind of thing. So the definitions need to be verified by outside experts. Don't just believe our own people. They have skin in the game. What you need to do is get outside experts where necessary to look over our shoulder. If I were the finance board, that's what I would hire. I'd hire some outside experts and say, look, you tell us we got a good financial plan. You tell us we got the best financial checks and balances that we could have. You tell us this and you tell us that. And maybe even somebody to look over the schools and make sure they're spending properly and that their revenue is right and all that kind of thing, and that they have a plan for us. So experts will be needed. They'll cost money, but it's only a fool would try to save money by getting less help from experts. And when we do get the help from experts, we can't do like the last board. We can't ignore it. We've got to pay attention to the decisions that or advice we're given from these outside experts. Now, the next slide, we say that the Finance Board conducts periodic progress and decision-making reviews with action items. Now, if you're off plan, that might be every day. Certainly, have to pay attention to it. Now, if the Finance Board wants to appoint one person to do that kind of thing and report back to the Finance Board afterwards by email or by letter or something or by telephone, that could be accomplished. But we don't really have too many people on the Finance Board that are capable of doing that. It's very tough. I do know one, and that'll be pretty good. So we're back to the basics. We're back to the basics, and thank God for that. Maybe we'll have a chance to pull ourselves up. I'll be doing this program periodically to show you if there's any progress or not, and to be able to give you some advice from my own experience. There are other people who have different ideas, different experience. So glad we done got over it. So glad we finally got over it. So glad we done got over it. We done got over it at last. So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. They didn't do much at all. So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. So glad we done got over it. We can get back to the basics at last.